Right now, while you're watching this, the hottest place in your entire house is not your kitchen, it's not your garage, it's not the room with all the windows facing west. It's the space directly above your head, your roof. And if you live anywhere that sees summer temperatures above 80 degrees, that roof is acting like a giant iron skillet sitting in the sun all day long. The first thing Eli said to me when I arrived in Holmes County was something I thought was ridiculous. He looked up at the roof of my rental truck and said, "That's where your electric bill begins." I laughed. He didn't. Eli is 70 years old, born in Ohio, raised between Amish communities in Holmes County and Lancaster County, never owned an air conditioner, never paid a cooling bill, never installed a thermostat, and somehow spends every August sleeping comfortably while most Americans are hiding inside houses that sound like jet engines because the air conditioner never stops running. At first, I assumed it was because Amish homes are old, maybe thick walls, maybe better craftsmanship, maybe something special about the way they build. But Eli shook his head. "Most folks look at the wrong part of the house," he said. Then he pointed straight up. "The problem starts there. That afternoon, the temperature outside was 92 degrees. The weather app on my phone showed a heat advisory for most of Ohio. The kind of day when stepping into a parked vehicle feels like opening an oven door." Eli walked me across a gravel driveway toward a farmhouse his family had owned for generations. No air conditioning unit, no condenser, no ductwork sticking out of the walls, nothing. The house looked almost too ordinary. White siding, simple porch, metal roof, garden, out back, the kind of place you would drive past without noticing. But the second I stepped inside, something felt different. Not cold, comfortable. The air wasn't blasting. Nothing was humming. There was no artificial chill. The house felt stable, like it wasn't participating in the heat wave happening outside. I stood there for almost a minute trying to figure out why. Eli watched me smiling. "You feel it, don't you?" I nodded. "Feels cooler." He nodded back. "The roof isn't feeding the heat into the house." That sentence stuck with me, because most of us assume cooling starts with removing heat after it enters. The Amish approach starts by preventing most of it from entering in the first place, and that's when Eli took me outside again. He walked me around the side of the house and pointed toward an older barn sitting about 50 yards away. The roof was almost white, not bright modern paint, not some reflective commercial coating, just a soft, chalky color that looked like it had been there forever. "That barn is older than my grandfather," Eli said. I asked why the roof looked different. He smiled. "Because it was treated." Now, when most people hear that word, they imagine some expensive modern product, maybe something sold by a roofing company, maybe something requiring a crew and special equipment. Not Eli. He walked into the barn, reached onto a shelf, and pulled down a small cloth bag. Inside was a white powder. Nothing impressive, nothing high-tech, just powder. "This," he said, "costs less than a fast food meal." I looked at him. He looked back. Then he said something that made me pull out my notebook immediately. "My great-grandfather used this. His grandfather used it too. 200 years. Same material, same purpose, same result." The more Eli talked, the stranger the whole thing became, because this wasn't some forgotten Amish secret. Versions of the same idea existed all over the world. Ancient Greece, Egypt, Persia, Southern Europe, North Africa. Every civilization that dealt with brutal summer heat eventually discovered the same principle. Dark surfaces absorb heat. Light surfaces reject it. Simple. Obvious. Yet somehow modern housing moved in the opposite direction. I asked Eli why. He looked across the field before answering. "People stopped building houses." "What do you mean?" "They started buying systems." That answer bothered me for the rest of the day, because the numbers support what he was saying. The average roof temperature on a dark asphalt shingle roof can exceed 150 degrees during summer afternoons. Some measurements show temperatures approaching 160 degrees. Think about that. The outside air might be 95. Your roof can be 65 degrees hotter. Every minute that roof sits in the sun, it absorbs energy. That energy has to go somewhere. And eventually it moves downward, into the attic, into the insulation, into the ceiling, into the rooms where you live. Then the air conditioner spends the rest of the day trying to remove what the roof allowed inside. When Eli explained it that way, it sounded less like cooling and more like damage control. And that is when he told me the story that sent me down a rabbit hole I wasn't expecting. A story involving a roofing material older than the United States, a technique used by Amish families for generations, and a discovery from a government laboratory that proved a simple white coating could reduce roof temperatures by more than 40 degrees. The strange part? Almost nobody talks about it anymore. Not builders, not contractors, not real estate agents, not even most home inspectors. And according to Eli, there is a reason for that. A reason that begins with a bag of white powder costing less than $7 and ends with an industry worth hundreds of billions every year. The next morning, Eli met me before sunrise. Not because he was trying to impress me, because that is when Amish farmers start their day. By 6 o'clock, we were already walking through a field behind his cousin's farmhouse, coffee in hand, dew still hanging on the grass. The air felt felt cool, comfortable, but Eli pointed toward the eastern horizon where the sun was beginning to rise. "Give it 4 hours," he said. "Everything changes." I asked what he meant. He stopped walking. "The sun doesn't heat your house." I stared at him. That sounded impossible. Of course the sun heats your house. Everybody knows that. But Eli shook his head. "No, the sun heats the roof. Then the roof heats the house." At first it sounded like he was splitting hairs. Then he explained. "Imagine leaving 2 objects outside in the middle of July. One is painted black. The other is painted white. Same material, same size, same sunlight. By afternoon, the black object becomes dramatically hotter, not because it received more sunshine, because it absorbed more of it. The white object reflected much of that energy away. That single difference changes everything. The roof over most American homes is designed exactly like the black object. Dark asphalt shingles, dark composite materials, dark roofing membranes, surfaces that absorb enormous amounts of solar radiation every hour of every summer day. And once that energy is absorbed, it has to go somewhere, usually into your attic, usually into your living space, usually onto your electric bill. Eli bent down and picked up 2 stones from the edge of the field. One was dark gray, the other almost white. He placed them side by side in the sun. "Come back at noon," he said. "We'll see which one you want to hold." I already knew the answer. The strange part wasn't the science. The strange part was how obvious it was. Every farmer understands this. Every gardener understands this. Anyone who has ever walked barefoot across black pavement understands this. Yet somehow modern construction keeps repeating the same mistake. Around midday, Eli drove me to another farm a few miles outside Millersburg. The house belonged to one of his relatives. The building itself wasn't remarkable. What caught my attention was the roof. It looked almost faded, almost unfinished, like decades of weather had stripped away its color. When I mentioned that, Eli laughed. "It isn't faded." He climbed onto the porch and rubbed a finger against a section of trim coated with the same chalky finish. Then he held up his hand. "White residue. The coating is supposed to look like that." This was the first time he explained what Amish families had been using for generations. Hydrated lime, mixed with water. Sometimes nothing else. A material so old that archaeologists have found evidence of it being used thousands of years before electricity existed. The Egyptians used it, the Greeks used it, the Romans used it, communities throughout Europe used it. And when Amish settlers arrived from Switzerland and Germany, they brought the knowledge with them, not because they were trying to save energy. Electric bills didn't exist. They used it because it worked. The roof stayed cooler, the walls stayed cooler, the buildings lasted longer, and families remained more comfortable during summer. Simple, practical, proven. That word kept appearing during my time with Eli. Practical. The Amish rarely care whether an idea sounds impressive. They care whether it works. That afternoon, Eli showed me an old photograph hanging inside a farmhouse. The picture was more than 100 years old. Horse-drawn wagons, children standing barefoot, men wearing suspenders and broad-brimmed hats. But what caught my eye was the building behind them. The roof appeared almost white. The exact same appearance I had been seeing all week. Same material, same method, generation after generation. Long before air conditioners became common. Long before power companies sold cooling as a monthly service. Long before most Americans had even heard the term HVAC. Then Eli said something that completely changed the direction of the conversation. "You know what surprised me most?" I asked. "What?" "When I learned scientists spent millions proving something farmers already knew." He wasn't joking. Decades ago, researchers tested reflective surfaces on buildings and found dramatic reductions in roof temperatures. Surface temperatures drop, attic temperatures drop, indoor temperatures drop, energy consumption drop. The results kept pointing toward the same conclusion. The easiest heat to remove is the heat that never enters the building. That should have transformed the housing industry, but somehow it didn't. And the deeper I dug, the stranger the story became, because the people selling cooling systems had a very different solution. Instead of stopping heat at the roof, they focused on removing it after it arrived. Larger air conditioners, more insulation, bigger compressors, more electricity, more equipment, more maintenance, more monthly bills. The entire system was built around managing heat rather than preventing it. Eli listened while I explained some of the numbers. Then he shrugged. "Seems expensive." That might have been the most Amish response imaginable. Not anger, not conspiracy, not outrage, just a simple observation. Seems expensive. Because from his perspective, it was. Why spend thousands fighting heat every summer when a large part of the problem begins at the roof itself? Why spend decades paying utility bills without addressing the surface? Absorbing all that energy? Those questions stayed with me as we walked back toward the farmhouse. Then Eli stopped beside the old barn again. The same barn with the pale roof. The same barn that had survived generation after generation. And this time he pointed upward. "Most people think the secret is what goes on top." I asked if it wasn't. He smiled. "No." Then he pointed inside the attic. "The real secret is what goes underneath." That answer led directly to a technology connected to NASA, government research, and a discovery so effective that some homeowners cut their attic temperatures dramatically with a material costing less than a tank of gas. And according to Eli, once you combine that second layer with the old Amish coating, the roof stops behaving like a skillet entirely. It starts behaving like a shield. Eli climbed the attic ladder before I did. At 70 years old, he moved with the confidence of somebody who had spent his entire life around barns, rooftops, and rafters. I followed him into the attic expecting exactly what every American expects in the middle of summer: heat. The kind that hits you in the face the moment your head clears the hatch. The kind that makes you want to climb back down immediately. But that never happened. It was warmer than the rooms below. Of course it was. But it wasn't unbearable. It wasn't the oven-like environment I was used to. I checked the thermometer I had brought with me. 98 degrees. Outside temperature, 91. That number stopped me. Cold. Most attics on 90-degree days easily exceed 130 or 140 degrees. Many reach 150, yet this one sat barely above the outdoor air temperature. I looked around trying to find the explanation. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. Wood rafters, simple construction. No expensive equipment, no elaborate ventilation system. Then Eli pointed upward. Look carefully. Attached beneath the roof decking was a reflective surface, thin, lightweight, shiny. It looked almost too simple to matter. But according to Eli, this was where most people misunderstood how heat enters a house. The problem wasn't just hot air. The bigger problem was radiant energy, invisible heat radiating downward from the roof after it absorbed sunlight all day. The same phenomenon that allows you to feel warmth standing near a campfire without touching the flames. The roof becomes the campfire. Your attic becomes the space around it, and your house becomes the thing absorbing that energy hour after hour. Eli tapped the reflective material with his finger. This stops most of it. I asked where the idea came from. His answer surprised me. Not from the Amish. Then he smiled. From space. That afternoon I went looking for the history myself. What I found was fascinating. When engineers began designing spacecraft during the early space age, they faced a problem unlike anything builders encounter on Earth. Spacecraft exposed to direct sunlight became incredibly hot. When they entered shadow, temperatures plunged. Managing radiant heat became a matter of survival. Engineers developed highly reflective materials capable of bouncing thermal radiation away before it could build up. The principle worked so well that eventually researchers started asking a simple question: if reflective barriers can protect spacecraft from solar radiation, what happens if you place similar materials inside residential attics? The results were remarkable. Test after test showed substantial reductions in attic temperatures. Air conditioners ran less frequently. Energy consumption dropped. Homes stayed more comfortable. And unlike many modern technologies, the concept wasn't complicated. The material wasn't creating cooling. It was preventing heating. That distinction matters. Most cooling systems consume energy to remove heat after it arrives. Reflective barriers reduce the amount arriving in the first place. The more Eli explained it, the more I noticed a pattern. Everything the Amish did followed the same philosophy. The summer kitchen prevented cooking heat from entering the home. Wide porches prevented sunlight from striking exterior walls. Deep roof overhangs prevented direct solar gain through windows. Light-colored surfaces reflected heat before it could be absorbed. High ceilings kept warm air away from living spaces. Nothing fought heat. Everything avoided inviting it inside. The approach felt almost backwards compared to modern construction, and yet it made perfect sense. As the afternoon sun moved higher, Eli led me back outside. We stood beside the barn again. The white-coated roof reflected sunlight so intensely it almost seemed to glow. Then he pointed toward a neighboring property. Dark roof, black shingles, standard modern construction. You know what's funny? He said. What? Both families spend money on roofs. I laughed. He didn't. The difference is what happens after. That statement stayed with me, because the modern roof creates decades of additional costs. Higher attic temperatures, higher cooling loads, higher electricity consumption, larger HVAC systems, more maintenance. That night, after spending 2 days walking through Amish farms with Eli, I sat on the porch of the farmhouse watching the last light disappear over Holmes County. The fields were quiet, no traffic, no air conditioners humming from every direction, no generators, no mechanical noise at all, just crickets, and a faint breeze moving through the trees. I asked Eli the question that had been bothering me since I arrived. If this works so well, why doesn't everybody do it? He smiled. Not because he thought the answer was funny, because he had heard the question before. A better question, he said, is who benefits when people don't? That answer sent me down a path I wasn't expecting, because once I got home, I started looking into the economics of cooling. The numbers are staggering. Americans spend billions every year on air conditioning, billions more on electricity, billions more replacing HVAC systems, billions more upgrading insulation, repairing ductwork, and maintaining equipment. Entire industries exist because houses absorb heat faster than they need to, and most of that battle starts at the roof. Think about it. If a homeowner reduces attic temperatures by 40 degrees, cooling demand drops. If cooling demand drops, the air conditioner runs less. If the air conditioner runs less, electricity use falls. If electricity use falls, monthly bills shrink. One simple improvement creates a chain reaction that benefits the homeowner but reduces revenue everywhere else along the line. Eli never talked about conspiracies. That wasn't his style. He always came back to the same idea. Incentives. People talk about what makes money. People sell what makes money. People advertise what makes money. A $7 bag of hydrated lime doesn't make anybody rich. A $50 roll of reflective foil doesn't create recurring revenue. A homeowner who cuts cooling costs dramatically becomes a less valuable customer, and that reality explains a lot. Not everything, but a lot. The next morning before I left, Eli showed me one final example, a farmhouse built by his grandfather. The structure wasn't new. It wasn't modern. It certainly wasn't designed by a team of engineers with computer simulations, yet it remained remarkably comfortable despite temperatures that had stayed above 90 degrees for most of the week. The roof reflected sunlight. The attic blocked radiant heat. The porch shaded the walls. The windows encouraged airflow. Every part worked together. No single feature performed a miracle. The system worked because each piece supported the others. And that's the lesson I think most people miss. The Amish never relied on one solution. They stacked simple solutions together: a reflective roof, a radiant barrier, ventilation, shade, thermal mass. Each one reduced the workload of the next. By the time summer heat reached the living space, most of its energy had already been stopped. That approach is almost the opposite of how many homes operate today. Modern construction often allows heat to enter first and deals with it later. The Amish approach tries to stop it before it arrives. As I packed my things into the truck, Eli handed me a small cloth bag, the same kind I had seen earlier. White powder, inside, hydrated lime. I laughed. "You really carry this around?" He laughed too. Only when somebody spends 2 days asking questions. Then he became serious. "You know what bothers me?" I asked what. He pointed toward the roof. The knowledge was never lost. It was simply ignored, and once you see it, it's difficult to look at a roof the same way again. The next time you step outside on a summer afternoon, place your hand on a dark surface sitting in direct sunlight. Then imagine thousands of square feet of that material covering your home all day long. That's the battle your air conditioner fights every summer. The Amish learned centuries ago that the easiest battle to win is the one you never have to fight. And it all starts with the roof. If you've ever measured your attic temperature during the summer, leave your state and the temperature in the comments. I'd love to see how hot attics get across the country. And if you've tried reflective coatings, radiant barriers, or any passive cooling method, share your results. The best ideas often come from ordinary homeowners willing to experiment. Next time, I'll show you another Amish method that challenges a modern household expense most people assume is unavoidable, and the reason an entire industry hopes you never look into it.